This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to Spiritual Psychic with Sara Wiseman, where you'll learn how to unlock the secrets of spiritual intuition and your own psychic gifts. Here's Sara.
Welcome everyone to Visionary Psychics. I'm Sara Wiseman, and today we have as our Visionary Psychic guest, Dr. Steve KOC. And a lot of you guys know from my work, I tend to teach the skills of clairvoyance and clairaudience, or channeling, as sort of a lot of what I focus on. And yet a lot of you guys out there have really amazing gifts in energy work, the body, somatic practices, hands healing. And I wanted to have discussion today with Dr. Steve, as he's truly a master energy healer and worked for, I think, over 40 years as a chiropractor and energy healer. And I wanted to just kind of have you talk about your experience. So when you're doing energy healing with someone, what is the process like for you? Like, what do you feel and what do you experience as you're working with or on someone?
My experience is more in vision than feeling. People will say my hands get really hot and I don't feel any warmth in my hands or extra warmth. It's more like I see what's going on, almost like having like X-ray vision. I'll get images. What I do, my process is to be present with that person and to be in that space. And of course, listening to what they're actually saying, but also listening with my inner senses and hearing and seeing patterns and images, symbols, even body organs. I'll just have a flash of, liver or kidney or something, and things will pop up. So basically it's clearing my mind and seeing what pops up. To me, it's more of a seeing or a visioning than a feeling. That's just how I relate to it sensory wise.
Do you have the sense when you're working with people, like some people have reported that guides may come in the room or the departed. Do those kinds of things happen for you when you're working with someone?
I don't work with guides in the traditional sense, but in this energetic world of seeing, there's a lot going on. The air around us is not empty, the space around us. And there are a lot of different types of things that come to me, and I know they're being directed. There's a sense of that there's some type of guidance going on, but I don't have like a guide named Joe who shows up and helps me with stuff. But it's more of an infinite. My personal belief is I want to tune in with that infinite guide, that infinite energy that permeates all, and cut out the middlemen.
Do you ever find sometimes people who are doing energy work report a lot of issues with like taking it in or being too empathic? What kinds of things do you do to, like, as you know, we've talked about this, but like I don't really do, for me, the protection for me is the guides. I tether to the guides and have their vibrational state protect me, but other people do things differently. In all these experiences of working with, I don't know, probably tens of thousands of people for you, what have you experienced? Whose energy is whose, or how do you sort of work with that idea of a lot of energy all the time?
Yeah, that's a very important point, because it took me some hard lessons to learn that I needed to be able to sort that out and keep that clear. In my early days of practicing, you start to feel like, hey, I'm doing something, and I've got something together, and that always would backfire. Whenever I thought I'm doing it, I would start, picking up the aches and pains. The person would be like, oh, I've got this pain here, and then 2 hours later, I'd have this pain here, but they're fine. So I learned the hard way to keep that sorted, and partly was attempting to be humble, trying to do the best to be a conduit and not think that I'm all special and doing something, and understanding that there's bigger energies at play. When someone would have a positive response to one of my treatments or whatever it might be, and I would understand that, well, that's partly their karma too, that they are being healed, so to speak. It's not really just me. And even on a physical level, it might have been, the massage therapist and the acupuncturist and the food they ate that morning that all led to the point where finally what I did clicked in and made a difference for them. So it wasn't only me. And if something, conversely, I started realizing, if I appeared to be unsuccessful with a patient, a client, it was also maybe not all about me either. Maybe it wasn't their time, or maybe I was just one of those steps along the way for the next person who gets the glory and the fame of being able to heal them. So it's a humbling of realizing that you're just one step along this other person's path. You're crossing paths in time and space, and you do what you can. I could do what I could and let it go. Kind of a Taoist approach of not being attached to the outcome of our actions, but just being in a flow of knowing what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and let it go. And on top of that, though, I also was intensely, at the same time of developing healing and psychic type abilities, which I felt I always had my whole life. They were just there randomly. And most often I would get gaslit and told that it wasn't true or I was wrong. So I didn't give it a lot of attention. But when I started practicing yoga and meditation, it was like putting rocket fuel under these abilities, and it made them more focused and more regular. And I started to understand that there was patterns to it. It isn't just a random, I had pick up this person and empathically know what was going on with them and this other person not. I found out that there were techniques, things that I then practiced, and found that they also protected me, because they were, self-care techniques that enhanced my abilities, but also enhanced my own, like my own shield or whatever. Like I think of the aura, the electromagnetic field, as being a filter, and meditation and different yoga poses and mantras and things affect and change this aura, this field. And that would go a long way to helping me work with someone clearly and not get overly empathic or pick up their stuff and carry it with me. So there, from all these different approaches, they coming together, it seemed to be something that over time I got more into a flow of knowing, if I'm not prepared, don't take on the heavy work.
Right.
And the more I do my own preparation, whether meditations, the big one, breathing techniques, having the breath going, and just being present, then that humility kind of would come naturally. I mean, I'm no way claiming I'm humble. That's the one thing. If you say you are, you aren't, just by claiming it. But somehow getting that, what I'm calling humility, is being able to be present and letting go, and not being as attached to thinking that of all that.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about your connection. So you have done Kundalini yoga and taught that technique, and you've worked with Kundalini energies for a very long time. You've also had this really deep meditation practice. You also have a deep sound healing affinity. And then also you're super connected to nature. And how does nature, like what I feel in the vibrational sense, whenever I'm in nature, what seems to happen is that there's this, like, even within a few seconds of being in nature, like even step outside and you're in the garden or what have you, instantaneously within a few seconds, there's this relaxation, this kind of relaxation response. And tell me how it works for you. Like, where does nature play a part in this whole awareness? Or what have you discovered there? And I'm gonna kind of walk a little and let the dog out, who will disclaimer, Dr. Steve and I are married, and the dog is probably going to Dr. Steve's room right now out of my office. So this idea of nature, like how has that been part of the whole for you? Because that's been a big part of your life.
Mm-hmm. That came very early on. I felt that affinity towards wanting to be in nature. I felt something was different. There was energetically, and didn't have vocabulary for this back then when I was a child, but I knew, I would have just said that it feels different, but energetically it's different being out of the man-made environment and more towards that which is already being just what it is and has no pretense about it, being nature. And I learned really early on that I love that connection, that feeling that I got, whether it was standing at the edge of one of the Great Lakes, which felt like standing at an ocean, and the same kind of feeling, vast, endless water, and as far as you can see, and or being in the woods, and started noticing that I felt better there. And then, through teenage years and the hippie years, people wanted to get back to nature and started finding out that it was really enjoyable. For me, I just actually enjoyed being outside more than inside. And over time, I found that the nature environment was actually recharging. When I started, once I practiced meditation and yoga and became more sensitive and developed a vocabulary for this, I understood that it was like a charging port,
right?
Going and plugging in and getting recharged without doing much more than just being there. And then also, the more I did of practices in nature, then they were enhanced. I found that by sitting outside, even if it was cold and rainy, that meditation was more powerful for me than sitting in a room somewhere. A lot of this can be scientifically explained. Electromagnetic fields, we have wiring all around us in our house and all these other electromagnetic fields. We have synthetic fabrics and things, and these dull our aura to some degree, our own energy. And when you're out in nature and can flow with that, you're just being, like I say, recharged. And I use it for that. And speaking of the dog, so last night at 1:11 a.m., the dog had to go out, and I took her out and stepped out in the backyard, and it was the middle of a windy rainstorm. And I just stood out there for way longer than the dog needed and soaked it all in, because it was one of those special moments. The magic was in the air, and the trees were waving and dancing, and light rain is coming down, and
And a
I just,
full moon also, I believe.
yeah.
Yeah.
A night ago it was a full
Yeah.
moon. So the moon was trying to peek through the clouds, and it was very special, very magical. And I just soaked it in and took advantage of it rather than run out. Oh, it's raining. Got to run back in as quick as I can. You darn dog. It's like, the dog woke me up, and it's 1:11 and I'm stepping outside into this magical show going on. And that's how nature feeds me now. Pretty much whenever I get into it, I instantly tune back in and like, okay, what's here? What's going on?
Yeah, like instantly transported back to your true self is how I feel. Well, this has been a super interesting discussion. I know that we could talk for a lot longer, but we're trying to keep these visionary psychics short so that people can get through them. So I will put the contact information for Dr. Steve underneath. And thank you so much for your time. And
You're welcome.
thank you. Okay, thanks.
Okay. See ya.
Thank you.